I've been a little bit naughty. I've gone around looking for the worst examples I could possibly find of these two diseases so I could show you what the difference between them is. And the two diseases I'm talking about are black spot, which is a fungal related disease, sometimes bacterial, and orchid fleck virus, which is a viral disease. Viral diseases are the ones that we all are the most afraid of. So let's take a look to see how we can differentiate between the two of them. And welcome to the Nature Company. Today I'm going to give you a breakdown of these two diseases and have a closer look or inspection at them to see if we can see what the telltale signs are, whether we have a fungal disease or whether we have a viral disease, whether the plant can be saved or whether it's probably going to need to be destroyed. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. So I went on a search far and wide to try and find these two poor, sickly plants so that I'd be able to give you a better understanding of what each of these two diseases, for one, can do to your plant and how they can be or whether they can possibly be saved. With fungal infections, generally they're not systemic, they just at the point of contact or at the point where you can see them, unless of course the disease is really far gone, very much like this one. But this doesn't mean that this still can't be saved, because once we kill the fungi, the disease is gone. Whereas with a virus, I'm afraid there's no way of killing the virus at the moment. They haven't come up with any clever immunizations or such that are going to save our orchids. Viral diseases are ones that can be quite traumatic for us because we may have to destroy our plant, or if it's a particularly valuable one, there could possibly be a way of saving parts of the plant. We'll get to that at the end. So let's look at black spot disease. Or shall we say, let's look at 5 different categories that will help you distinguish between the two. These will be the appearance, the pattern, the texture, the spread, and how they affect the flowers and the pseudobulbs. Because often we see it on the leaves, but these diseases actually do affect other parts of the orchid itself as well. So let's just have a closer look at black spot first. Black spot, as the name says, you see all these black spots or lesions, if you want to call them that, or markings on your leaf. They generally sort of from brown, dark brown to almost black in color. They sort of irregular shaped, sometimes kind of roundish, and they spread around your leaf. You'll also notice as the disease expands, it produces larger, more pronounced areas of this necrotic patch. So that's basically the appearance, those brownish, blackish spots, and expanding into bigger areas. But is that enough? What about the pattern? Well, it doesn't necessarily have a particular pattern. It's basically spread across the leaf haphazardly, and only as the disease expands will you notice it covering all the leaves. It will generally start on a few leaves and then expand its way through, if left untreated. So you don't really notice any sort of geometrical shapes or anything like that when it comes to black spot. And the texture, well, if you rub your hand across it, you'll notice the markings are slightly indented, they're sunken, but there's also almost a squishiness, mushiness to it, especially those parts where the fungal decay has already started. So you get sort of like a mushy stickiness on your fingers. And if you're worried about me touching this, don't worry, I was clever enough to give this a good treatment beforehand. And I've got my hand sanitizer so that after I finish touching the plant and when I start touching anything else, I'm going to be fine. And also got to do with the texture. you may find some fuzziness or furriness or even powderiness to it. And that's the point where the spores are, or the fruiting bodies, has pushed its way to the surface and is trying to reproduce. So you may get those sorts of fuzziness, furriness, powderiness to the feel as well, to the texture. And the spread. Generally, you'll find that this is particularly prevalent in those wet times of the year, when you start having high humidities and lots of moisture, whether you're watering too frequently, whether there's not enough air movement. All of these things are going to make the spread of this and the progression of the disease happen much faster. As soon as it starts drying out, you start having some air movement, you notice a slowdown or almost a stop in the progression of the disease altogether. And what about on those flowers and those pseudobulbs? Well, on those flowers, let's see, there should be somewhere here anyway. You'll see it will also start getting these little lesions on them that are a little bit watery, and they just basically rot patches on the flowers. And the same will happen with those pseudobulbs. You'll end up with blackened, watery lesions that you could squeeze or slush your finger almost straight into. It's quite disgusting, and it actually generally often doesn't smell terribly nice. But don't get that confused with bacterial rot, which actually smells disgusting. Okay, we don't want to throw too many things in here. So that's basically what you're looking at with black spot. So let's just give our hands a spray again here. Now we have Orchid Fleck virus. This is a virus that has been transmitted to the plant through a vector. Generally, what is often known as false spider mite. It's a little mite that comes in and bites the plant after it has bitten another plant that has a viral infection, and then will now spread that through to this plant. So it's spread almost by the sap, the inside of the plant itself. So even if you're breaking off pieces of the plant, or you're using your tools to cut through the plant, and then you don't wash your hands or your equipment afterwards, and then you cut through another plant, you're going to be doing the same thing. You'll be spreading that infection from your infected plant to an uninfected plant. And let's have a look at what happens here. So the appearance of it is also, sadly enough, you get little black spots, but that's not all. You'll get almost a mosaic appearance of different colors. You'll get chlorotic patches, which are the yellowing, they're losing its chlorophyll. You'll get necrotic patches, which are those black dark spots, and then everything else in between. So it almost produces a mosaic appearance of different colors and blotches on your leaf. These can either be rectangular or hexagonal or any other geometric shape, or they could just be irregular like this. So you just land up with this mosaic look on your plant. Often the lesions will start off with a silvery whitish appearance. You'll see these tiny little silvery whitish spots on here, and then it spreads out into all this manic beauty, but a terribly infected leaf. And afraid to say, it's not only going to be this leaf that's infected, it's going to be your whole plant. And now what about the pattern? Well, as I said, it could be sort of geometric sort of patterns that are involved in this sort of mosaic appearance that it has, but not necessarily. But you will notice all of these different colors throughout your leaf. It may even form these strange concentric circles. Well, these lesions with these concentric circles around it, or just in bands. So it does form often sort of like these geometric shapes. So are they intelligent? Well, they're more intelligent than us because we can't get rid of them. But anyway, so you'll end up possibly with something like this, but this is less common in the orchid fleck virus than it is in the odontoglossum ring spot virus. This you'll see more often in that, but it doesn't mean that the orchid fleck virus is going to get the same. Just also remember, you'll get also those little black flecks across your leaf. That's obviously why it's called orchid fleck virus. So we've had the appearance, the pattern, the texture. Well, if you feel across it, you can also feel those sunken areas, and it's quite dry. So you don't have that wet mushiness that you have with your fungal infections. It would feel like any orchid leaf that's dry. It's just indents, and then you could have a dry dead spot in the center, but other than that, no mushiness. And what about the spread? Well, as I said, this is spread by vectors. So either by something like those mites that will bite your plant and then go across to the next plant and reinfect, and then reinfect the next after that, or by poor sanitation of your equipment and your hands, and sadly enough, even by your pots. If you have an orchid that's been infected by this virus and it's gone all the way through to the roots, you empty your pot, and if you don't sterilize your pot, you can pass this virus across into your next orchid that you pot into that pot. So please be careful of that. Also, it has no connection with how wet or dry the seasons are. This will happen either way. So even if you notice this disease continuing to spread during those dry seasons, then you know, yeah, it's possibly more likely a virus than it is going to be a fungus. And what happens to the flowers and the pseudobulbs? Well, the flowers, you get all these streaked and blotched markings on them. It sort of washes out or deepens some of the color in these like streaky sort of patterns or these blotches on your flowers. And sometimes that's the only way to tell whether your orchid has a viral disease or not, is suddenly you notice the flowers then start getting these strange streaks and things. It's often easier to notice in some of these lavender flowers where you suddenly get white markings or you get a deep lavender marking on it. But that's what you're going to notice in your flower. And in the pseudobulbs, what you may land up with is longitudinal stripes on your pseudobulbs, which may then cause deformation. Deformation is something that deformation of your pseudobulbs and your growth. So it's not a very pretty sight. But again, this is not going to cause that wet, sludgy, sticky rot that what fungal infection is going to cause. What are the key differences between the two of these? The black spot and the orchid fleck virus, well, this is a fungal attack and this is a viral attack. That's obviously the most basic difference between the two of them. The spot characteristics are slightly different. Here you're going to be getting irregular spots spread around your plant in an irregular fashion, whereas here you're going to get a more of a mosaic appearance to your plant, and those spots are going to be look almost like flecks across the orchid leaf in that mosaic. You can get sort of geometric shapes involved in here, but otherwise they could just be irregular, but you'll get that whole mosaic appearance. Also, you'll get the wetness involved or the sticky juiciness involved in the fungal decay here, whereas you're not going to get that in your orchid fleck virus. The transmission of the two of these, with the black spot being fungal it's going to be more prevalent during those wet periods, that high humidity with overwatering, with limited air movement. So at those points, if you start seeing this appearing, then you know it's more likely to be the fungal attack than it is going to be a virus, because the viral attack, it's spread through mites. So if you're not keeping proper pest management systems in place and you're not keeping sanitized equipment and tables and everything else, then you're more likely going to be having a viral problem, especially during those drier periods. And remember, your viral attack, your Orchid Fleck virus, is a systemic. It's going to be transported throughout your whole entire plant. So there's not going to be an uninfected part of the plant at all. With your black spot, it's only really the spots and the areas around them that are infected, and the rest of the plant is fine. Those hyphae stretch out through into your plant, and only if you leave your plant untreated will it infect the whole plant altogether. And still, even at that point, you can treat with a fungicide to kill that fungus and have your plant regrow, whereas your virus is going to be in your plant always. So how are you going to confirm which one you have? Well, we keep saying the same things over and over. You're looking for those wet spots, that mushiness that appears with your fungal decay, those irregular markings, whereas here your plant is going to be dry. And if you're seeing mites running around, you more than likely have a viral disease. And again, under the conditions, if it's a wet, damp periods, and this is when this blooms up, the disease spreads faster and further and quicker and more virulently than when it suddenly dries out, then you know it's more fungal. If your disease continues, no matter whether it's a dry season or a wet season, then you possibly have a virus. But the only way that you'll ever truly know whether you have a viral disease is through testing. Through scientific laboratory testing. You can get home kits now available. We'll drop a link to the Amazon shop down below, and perhaps you can get something there, but they are relatively expensive. So it's not something you can go through and buy hundreds of to treat all of your, or to test all of your plants. You can take a couple of your plants that you consider possibly are infected by viruses and test them. And then you know if you have a viral infection amongst your plants. Invariably, at some point, everyone has had at least one plant with a viral infection. And as long as you can keep your pest management under control and keep sanitized equipment, it shouldn't necessarily be spread across to your other plants. But to be always safe, separate it, keep it in a different area, or destroy it. I'm afraid that's the sad part about this. Viruses can't be treated in any other way, and to be sure that you kill all the pests and keep everything away that's going to transport the disease from one plant to another is quite difficult. In some of the bigger, more fancier collections, what they are doing is they're doing meristem reproduction of their plants, cloning them that way, and some of those clones they are managing to get viral-free plants from. So not all of them. It's if they're catching that initial growth fast enough from those new bud points, sometimes they are able to get viral-free cell samples that they can then clone into more plants. So if your plant is particularly valuable and you know a good enough lab that can do that for you, then it's worth a try. So what are the practical tips we can take away from this to help with our orchids? Well, if it's going to be black spot, increase your circulation, reduce your watering, and try and decrease humidity if possible at all. And that way you can limit your infections. Also, treat with a fungicide or use organic fungal protection agents, and you shouldn't have too much problem with your orchids and fungus, because they can be controllable. Because if your orchids are healthy and small doses of fungus are on them, they're actually quite fine. That's not going to harm or kill your plant in any way. You just want to manage them so that they don't bloom out of control. You want your orchids to bloom, not your fungus. And if it's Orchid Fleck virus, separate it immediately. If you suspect it has it, separate it. If you can possibly get it tested, test it. And then the rest, I'm afraid, is going to be up to you. But it's always best to consider destroying your plant, because this viral disease, although your plant can survive with it for many, many years, it can slowly draw the energy out of your plant until it's either deformed or it's lost all its vigor and it stops flowering. But it's probably best to make sure that you don't get this spread throughout your entire collection, because some plants react more severely than others, and it can actually kill your plant altogether. And if you're still unsure if your plant has Orchid Fleck virus or black spots, drop a comment down below. Perhaps we can help you out there. Or go have a look at that Buy Me a Coffee link. Ed posts a lot of information up there all the time that is available for free for everyone. There is also a bit of gated content for members only. And sign up, don't be shy, become a member and grow like a pro. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.